Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I am here with my friend Rob Henderson. Rob, how are you doing today?
Hey, good, Richard. How are you?
Doing okay. So we watched a show called Yellowjackets. It's on Showtime. It's had the first season last year, I think 2021. We're trying something new. Usually we watch a whole thing and then we talk about it. We watched episode 1 through 6. So there's 10 episodes in season 1. We watched 1 through 6. So for those of you who haven't watched it, which is, some of you have watched it, but most of you, probably it's not like the biggest show in the world. For those of you who haven't watched it, you can listen to this, or you can go watch it first. Watching 6 episodes is more manageable than 10, and then you could be caught up with us by the time we do 7 through 10. So you can watch this with us, unless it's very hard. We do like The Sopranos, we do like a whole 6 seasons, whatever, in episode, and then if you haven't seen it, that's it.
We
But anyway,
watched, we watched six, and it's a fast-paced show too, right? Like it's very much a sort of like a cinematic style, like just like fast-paced. The plot is interesting, the characters are interesting. There's no sort of like literary meandering in this kind of show, the way there is in other kinds of shows, like even The Sopranos. There were shows that didn't really have a lot of content within self-contained episodes, but this one is like every episode matters. It keeps you hooked. There are a lot of cliffhangers, so yeah, this is
yeah,
like you can get through 6 episodes pretty quickly, I think.
yeah. So this is a show where the main characters are all female. And what's that feminist criticism where they say how many movies are there where like two women are talking to each other and not
The
about a man?
I'll probably mispronounce this. It's like the Bechtel test or the Bechdel test. It's Bechdel. And
Okay.
yeah, it's something about like, yeah, two women communicating and not about relationships, I guess, right? Or boyfriends or, yeah,
Yeah, or not a man. I
relationships.
think it was just not a man. Yeah, and I
No.
think that's right. I think the feminists are. I don't doubt this is true. You watch a lot of shows. Yeah, you start paying attention to it, and that's right. And that's fine. We're not woke here. We understand. Like if you're making a movie about war or organized crime or something, which a lot of shows are about stuff like that, or politics or history. It's obviously going to be men. So it's to have a show that this heavily female is rare, and rarely something I watch. Have you watched a show recently in like years, like that has had this? Was this female heavy and part of the top characters?
I watched a show a few years ago, or it was just in the lockdown, like 2 years ago. Big Little Lies. It was an HBO miniseries with like Nicole Kidman, Reese Witherspoon, some other like big name. There was like four or five women, um, but that's like the only one I can remember.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I
yeah,
watched
this might
six.
be like I can count
Yeah,
on like one hand for sure. Like these
yeah.
kinds of
So
shows.
the two ones that I remember watching: Sex in the City back when it was out, um, and then Girls. Did you watch Girls? I thought Girls was
Oh
really good.
right, yeah. I watched like the first 3 or 4 seasons of
Yeah,
Girls back
yeah.
when they were still on the air.
Show's literally called Girls. That's how rare an all-female show is. Just girls
Then
for
you know
no
what it
reason.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although
So
interestingly, there's a show called The Boys, but there's no show called just Boys or
there's
Guys. There's
no
no show called
there,
Guys, right?
there's no
Or is
guys. Yeah, there's
there?
the boys, which is the that's the superhero thing, which I watched like the first half episode of. Um,
A lot of people
but
like that, but I've never seen any. Yeah, I've never even watched a trailer.
yeah. Okay, so yeah, so this show is very female heavy, and it's not Six in the City, and it's not Girls, because I felt like both of those shows were like overtly political in their own way,
Hmm.
and they represent politics of different times. And like Sex in the City was like sort of more sex positive, heteronormative liberalism, whatever, in the early 2000s, and then Girls was more like cynical. Um, and just like they were jaded by like the sexual revolution. It was like the Sex of the City, they were like still living it, and like by the time you got to Girls, they were just it was more nihilistic.
Was there a generational gap there? Like Sex in
Oh
the
yeah,
City was more like Gen X, I guess,
and even they
and
and they
Girls
were
was more
even
millennial.
yeah, and even the characters were old for the show too. So they were like, it was, I don't know, in like the early 2000s, late 1990s, but they were like 40 years old. I mean,
So they were
they were big.
like borderline boomer, like,
Yeah,
these
yeah, they
women,
were
right?
almost boomer. Yeah, so it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
Gen, yeah. and Girls was like came out 10 years later, but I think they're like 10, 15 years younger
Yeah, they were
in the show.
yeah, well into the millennial era, that generation, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly. So it's not that far apart in like time when they were shows, but yeah, it's very far
yeah.
apart in as far as generations. Uh, but this one is not really. This is not political. This doesn't have a narrative about women in general. I don't get that. It's just sort of a girl's version of a Lord of the Flies. Did you ever read Lord of the Flies, by the way?
I never read Lord of the Flies, but I can see I know the plot, right? It's a very famous book, so yeah,
Yeah.
that would make sense that it's sort of the female version of Lord of the Flies. I mean, it reminded me. This is like an obscure reference of this book by the biologist Robin Baker, 10, 15 years ago, called Primal, about like this shipwrecked group of, it was like a group of professors and students who got stranded in an island, and then they sort of like devolve, and it's supposed to be this sort of commentary on like what human nature looks like separated from civilization, which I guess is what Lord of the Flies is too.
Yeah, and the Robin, yeah, and and there's different. I actually wish I did. I didn't read Lord of the Flies either. I think I started to read it at one point, but I wish we could have compared it a bit, because there's this thing called human nature, but there's also this thing called male nature, and there's also this thing called female nature, and I don't know if this is where the show is going, but if it just ends up that the female the female experience in the wilderness is no different than the male experience in the wilderness. They're just copying what happened at Lord of the Flies. I would be very skeptical that that's a realistic portrayal.
I mean, I guess
Although,
so if I could imagine someone hearing that, and I mean, one of the key plot points of this show is that Shauna, right, one of the main characters, one of the young girl. Well, I guess we should set up the plot, right, for people who are listening.
yeah,
This group of, it's a soccer team of high school girls, and their coach, and I think like, I don't know. There's like a couple of boys. I actually don't know how they were involved. Like, there's a teenage boy who's the same age as the girls.
I talked to some people, so I had to figure this out with people. So they were going on to finals or national championship or something, and they crash in like the woods, and it's in Canada, isn't it? It's supposed to be in
like
Canada.
the wilderness of Canada.
Yeah, and so they're
so
up
they
there,
have this plane
and
crash.
and also the assistant coach, the guy, the girls' team is there. Some of the girls die, I think, in the plane crash. But then there's the assistant coach who's lost his leg, and then there's two young teenage boys with them that were the sons of the coach. The coach died.
Oh, right. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because they talked about, there was like a little plot point between the two boys, and like how the younger boy was like, distressed at the loss of their father, but then the older boy was like, oh, dad was an asshole or whatever. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, okay, so they have the one teenage boy who's the same age as the girls, who has like a little love affair with one of them, and then like there's a younger boy who's probably like 12 or something, who's just along for the ride, I guess. And one of the sort of the leader of the group, right, Jackie, she's like the pretty girl, she's like the one that is sort of the center of the soccer team. She has this boyfriend who's a very good looking guy, but she doesn't know that her best friend Shauna is secretly having sex with her boyfriend.
Or had sex? Did she have sex once? Secretly having sex, or just
I think
had
it was
sex?
a couple of times that they did this.
Okay.
Right, the cheating went on a couple of times, and so then Shauna gets pregnant, and she's pregnant out there while they're stranded in the wilderness. And anyway, so this is just to say that like it's not the same, I guess, because they have to deal with challenges like pregnancy, right?
Well,
the way that men,
that's
and so
periods. Yeah, obviously that's
they have periods, right? They have that whole scene with like their periods sync up. Aunt Flo shows up at the same time, and they all have to deal with the whatever, this sort of how to deal with periods and that kind of stuff. So there's like they underscore that these are a bunch of teenage girls, right? And there's but do you think that they're trying to say that they're all the same? Like
I don't know. I'd have to read Lord of the Flies and see what sort of what happens there, and if it just copies it, then
it's not the Lord of the Flies. Aren't they like young boys though? I remember like reading about Lord of the Flies, and aren't they like, I don't know, 10-year-old? I mean, someone in the comments or something can correct us, but I thought they were like 10 or 12. They weren't like. I think it would have been a much different kind of if you stick a bunch of 16-year-old boys in the wilderness, I think it would have been different.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know.
Yeah, and so, but the other part of the show that is going on is there's also this happens in the like 1990s, late 1990s, and so they're like high school, I think, seniors or juniors or whatever at the time, and then you also have you're cutting back and forth between the present day, so it's like 2022, whatever, and a couple of the women are still there. They're one of them is running for the state senate. One of them is like a housewife. One
Shauna,
of them is like like a nurse or something. One of them
Misty,
is like a drug addict. This is Nikki,
Natalie,
Nicole,
Natalie,
Nikki,
Natalie.
Natalie,
Yeah.
and then one of them we know at least Jackie is dead. After we find that out in
Well,
episode.
so that's one of the
Well,
interesting
yeah. People think
we
she's
think
dead.
she's dead. Everyone thinks. I mean, she probably is dead, but this could be like a plot twist later.
It
We
could be
don't
a
know for
twist.
certain. Right, because
Yes.
we haven't seen, like, if we see, so the timelines, there's 1996 when the girls are stranded, and then 2021 when a few of them survive, and you see their sort of middle-aged lives, what they're like now, having gone through this incredible ordeal. But we haven't seen like who specifically dies yet, right? Like, we're led to believe in 2021 that Jackie's dead, but we haven't seen her physically die in 1996 yet. So it's
Yeah, we
possible that
haven't seen her die, but
she's
her
missing
parents
or
think.
yeah.
Yeah, her parents think she's dead. Her friends assume she's dead. Did they see her die, or did she just disappear and never? Did she just disappear in the woods or something? And now, so they're being stalked by somebody. And I think I don't know if we're supposed to know this at this point. Is it Misty? Is Misty just doing this, or is it is Misty just getting that dark skinned woman to go around following everyone because she's trying to get the money, or is it somebody else?
Oh, yeah, that's unclear to me. It seems
It's
like
unclear
Misty's
to me too.
somehow involved in that, but it's not. Yeah, it hasn't been completely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I'm not sure. I know what you mean though. That like, yeah, they're
Yeah.
getting these text
Otherwise, she's just
messages, leaving money on like whatever. Like, there's like a sort of a blackmail thing going on here, ransom.
yeah. And she okay. So yeah, we're okay. So so that's the
Yeah,
plot. That's
that
basically
part is a little bit unclear. That like now in the future, right? In 2021. These girls are getting different messages from someone saying like, we know what you did. If you don't give us money, we're going to reveal potentially damaging
yeah.
information. But I guess we
So
could talk more about the characters, right? Like
yeah,
what each character is like within the plot, because I mean that's part of what makes it interesting, right? Like they managed to create each character who is actually
yeah,
compelling, and you know,
right. Well, yeah, Jackie is the most compelling, and I was very sad when we learned she uh she's probably dead.
the
She's
leader, the leader of the group, the girl, the pretty girl that
yeah,
everyone supposedly. Well, she's, I
yeah,
guess, in the soccer team situation, right? Like the coach specifically says that I want you to be the leader because you have the most influence, right?
mhm,
She has that sort of popular girl,
yeah,
social
yeah.
influence on the others. But why do you find her the most compelling?
Because she's the prettiest, and she's got the best personality. I
But
mean, she's. You
does
don't think
she?
most guys would? You don't think most guys would find Jackie more compelling than most of the other girls?
Well, I mean, what do you mean by? I mean, she just seems like to me, like a sort of standard, like cookie cutter. I don't know, pretty girl for the show. And then,
That's
like, once they're out in the wilderness, she is like, I mean, she's shown to be quite useless, right? Like, she has
yeah.
no skills. She doesn't bring any. Like, you sort of.
Maybe
I don't know.
that's
Maybe commenting on this, but like, she outside of her element, right? Outside of the sort of high school social dynamic scene, outside of
yeah.
that environment, she's like nothing. You know.
Rob, maybe you develop feelings for women based on their survival skills, and that's how you judge them. But for me, I judge them based on I judge them based on
I
other
don't
traits.
know.
So from my
Yeah.
perspective, yeah, I know she's out of her I know she's out of her element uh, in the woods, and she's just like a good person. I mean, she's a good person. She is a good person in
Is
the way
she?
that yes,
Okay, yeah,
in a lot of
she's.
in the way that a lot of pretty people are good people because they have no reason to hate anyone, right? A
Yeah,
lot
I
of
guess she did have that scene early on where she took all the girls, like the girls were arguing, and she took them aside and wanted each one of them to tell the other girls what they liked about. Like that was a nice I mean, it was sort of a plot device to get the viewer to remember the names, right? Because she had each one of them say the name and what they liked.
Yeah,
But
that's a
but
good
but
point.
it was a nice like little gesture. Like you could see like why she has influence, right? Because she does things like that, and the girls will listen to her.
Right. So yeah. So then we have Shauna, who I think is supposed to have the generic personality, and she's Jackie's best friend, and so she's still alive later. She's having an affair. This guy. What did
With
you think
Jack.
about this affair with this guy? With this, I don't know. Israel looks like an Israeli. He talks like an Israeli. I don't know. Like,
Does
what
he
do you
ever
think
talk
about
like
this?
an Israeli? I thought he just talked like a regular high school jock. Did he talk?
No,
Because
no, no,
she marries him.
the affair with the guy, not
That's
not
who
her.
she marries later, Shauna, right?
No, no,
Jackie's
but
boyfriend.
who's she having an affair with as an adult? Not the husband.
Oh, Israeli Adam.
Yeah, her son is the
An
husband's not Israel.
Israeli.
No, that's the
I don't think it sounds like an Israeli. He just sounds like a guy who's trying to. He like sounds like he's trying to be cool. He's obnoxious to me.
that's how
He's
Israelis.
like he's like an
That's how
art student.
Israelis talk.
The that character doesn't make sense to me. The Adam character, who the adult Shauna
Yeah,
cheating on
because
her husband,
she's at
right?
this point she's a 40-year-old woman. She's overweight. She's a good looking for an overweight
Yeah,
40-year-old woman.
right.
But this guy is like some kind of Israeli, some kind of Mediterranean.
Well, so she crashes into him, right? She's not paying attention. She crashes into this car. The guy who steps out is this like,
Yes, well, big
a
guy.
guy
Yeah,
in his 30s, pretty good looking guy, has a
is he in
weird
his 30s? He
manner of
could be in his
speaking.
could he be in his 20s?
Could be in his late 20s. That's possible. But he's like he's an artist who has a coexist bumper sticker. But then like he's like, oh, let me take care of it. I have a friend who's a mechanic who can handle
He's a
this. And it's
mechanic.
like, what are the odds that an art student with a coexist bumper sticker has like friends who are mechanics who owe him favors? And again,
Yeah,
yeah, like that. There's something wrong with this. I don't know if the
but
writers were being silly
he's the
or
mechanic. We saw he was at the
he was at the
mechanic
auto
shop.
body shop, right? Like he was
Yeah.
doing something there. That did like I don't know if he works there
Well,
because he
that's
also
not the
mentioned
big.
that he went to art school later, which didn't make sense either.
Well, I
But
think so. Though I think there's something going on here because he also, I mean, when he runs into her at the hotel, there's no explanation of how he runs into her at the hotel.
he said he
Remember?
likes to get mojitos or something there. He's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah,
This
they make a
hotel,
great
which is,
mojito in the like at the hotel bar.
and
Like
he's
I just think
yeah,
about hotel bars and
yeah. So I,
well, didn't who was it? Someone mentioned to Shauna that like, oh, it's her daughter, right? Shauna's
yeah,
daughter. I don't remember the girl's name, but her
and
daughter
it's
is
Callie.
like, hey, this guy probably knows who you are, mom. Like you're Googleable. Like you can just search yourself online, and people like you're a known person, a public figure, and so this guy is probably that could be potentially just stalking you. Or like wants something from maybe Adam is the one who's sending these weird text messages
Well,
asking for
that's the possibility that it doesn't make a lot of sense, because yeah, how okay, so they meet and then yeah, the running into the hotel is a pretty big coincidence, and then he takes her to a party where her daughter is. It's in New York City, so they go to a party in New York. They happen to be at the same party in New York City too.
yeah, when they bump into her 16-year-old daughter, Shauna's
and,
daughter.
the, and then and then like when she sees her daughter, Adam comes and like starts hugging her like, oh, what's going on, baby? So I think he's trying to get her to have a divorce. He's somebody sending him, the Israelis.
Yeah.
I don't know who.
But
Jackie is the one is sending him.
yeah, maybe. Although the setting up of their introduction to one another is I don't know, it's weird, right? Because she did like crash into him, right? Like he didn't bump into her randomly. Like she did crash into so there's still like
Yeah.
room for plausible deniability. Like we don't know for certain that he is a nefarious character.
No, we don't
Right.
know. We don't know. It could have all been. I think it would be bad writing if it was a coincidence. She bumped into him, but like whatever. He was stalking her, and he hit his brakes or something. Maybe we
Yeah.
find out because she was arguing with him at the start. She comes out and she's like, "It's all your fault." We don't. I don't know if do we actually see it. Maybe it was his fault. We don't know.
I'm pretty sure it was her fault, but it's
Yeah,
possible. Maybe he
yeah.
orchestrated it
Or
somehow.
even if it's her fault, still he could be. I mean, it would be that would be less of a coincidence than him finding her at the hotel and then him taking her to the same party in New York City as the daughter. That is much harder to believe as a coincidence. Then this guy was
Yeah,
stalking her.
but
She happened
like
to hit
TV
him.
shows do that though. It's like I think TV shows play with that trope too because like there's always these weird coincidences in TV shows for the sake of the plot, but then they could also stretch it so much that it can be part
Yeah,
of the like he planned it from the beginning, and that's why these coincidences
he did.
occurred, and
Yeah, in the middle of
So
the day, it's like the middle of the day. He just goes to this hotel lobby to get mojitos, and then he just
yeah,
finds this
like both coincidences, it's a little bit of a stretch.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
it's
there's
just hard to
something.
know like how seriously to take the show at this
Yeah,
point
because
with whether
and plus, like, this is obviously an older woman's fantasy of, like, he's like, he's too good for her. I mean, he's like a very, like, smooth, like, hip, mid-20s. She's just
yeah,
like an old housewife. And
he is like a dream, right? Because he's good looking. He has that like whatever the sort of vibe of someone you would want to have an affair with. But then he
yeah,
also has like good banter, right? Like Shauna's character, the adult version. It's weird. Like her teenage self is like morose and like stressed and whatever. But then the 40-year-old version of Shauna is like likes to sort of be quirky and get into
no,
it with
but I
her
think I
daughter.
think that's Adam bringing out of her. I don't think she was like that before. I don't think she's like that in
She
most
does it a little
situations. I
bit
think
with her
she's
daughter and with other people around her. But yeah, Adam brings it out more. And yeah, so
he,
and even her husband, right? Shauna's husband is also like very good looking for his
yeah.
age, right? Like he's
Well, yeah, but
extremely
he's cheating, so it makes sense. He's bored with her. And he's cheating on her, so that's sort of that makes sense. But
good
this guy is clingy. This guy keeps texting her, and she doesn't respond. In the last episode, he's like, "Oh, I
Are
miss
we
you,
sure
baby."
he's cheating though? Is the other thing. Like we
But
do
yeah,
see
it's
him in
weird.
the
Well, she saw
hotel
him.
walking with a woman, but we don't know
Yeah,
for certain what's going on there. You
he's
don't see him
he's
kiss her or even hold her hand. They're
right,
just
right,
walking
right.
together.
Well, he's lying to her constantly about going to this something. Well, he's lying to
But
her all the time.
probably like this could be one of these weird plot twists where like, oh, I've been planning our like whatever like to renew our vows, and I've been planning it with this other woman to help us. Whatever. She's like the travel agent or like the wedding planner or something, right? Like it could be. We don't know, but yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a lot of
All
it's a
signs
lot of
point to
planning. Yeah, he's going out in the middle of the night. He keeps saying, the data, what
there
is
we
it?
go.
The data distribution, the logistics
The
program
inventory
that keeps bringing.
database. I need to go check on the. Yeah, you're
And
so
his furniture
yes.
store.
But maybe he is like literally trying to fix the inventory database, and he's meeting with this woman to help plan something for
She's
Shauna,
an
right? Because
well,
there was that very sweet scene.
maybe that woman is an inventory database expert who's coming to
Possibly,
help
she's a
him.
consultant, but there was that very sweet scene where
Yeah, he
the
stands up to her.
Jeff, the husband, and Shauna, they're with Jackie's parents. Apparently, they meet with her every year to celebrate Jackie's birthday because she's dead. And
Yeah,
they're like, the mother of Jackie's making these snide remarks about how Shauna is like lives a mediocre life and how you can't, whatever, just like making all these cutting remarks. And then, yeah, Jeff stands up for her and then later says that he loves her. And I think it's possible that like it's not totally clear yet that he's been. I feel like the
yeah,
show would have made it clear by now that he was
yeah,
cheating
yeah.
somehow. Like it could also just show him, right? Like the show doesn't have to hide it. The show could just follow him
Yeah.
along to the hotel and then like make out with some woman or something
Yeah,
just
yeah.
to like.
It's still a
It's still
mystery.
a
Yeah,
little bit of a mystery.
it's still a mystery. He's
Yeah,
the one who's stalking everyone. He's sending the letters. He's sending the letters. He wants to find out what happened.
it could be him
He
too.
wants to someone get
It's
it out of
yeah,
him. He's
yeah. He could be bitter somehow about
that was
Jackie's
that. By
death.
the way, that scene with Jackie's parents. That was BS. I mean, that was such bad acting. It was so over the top. Oh, Jeff, you were with Jackie. Somebody so beautiful and perfect, but then you had to set. Oh, I didn't. It's like very like obvious, like over the top. I thought that was like probably the worst acting on the show that I've seen so far.
Yeah, from the old lady
Yeah,
from
or
Jackie's
writing,
mom.
bad writing. Maybe it's not her fault. The actress.
Yeah. Yeah, that wasn't the best. That wasn't the best scene. I mean, what's going on with so there are a couple of characters in the show in the 1996 timeline or setting, the two girls, one is Lottie,
Yeah. Well,
who
before
is
we get to the
yeah,
more minor, let's talk about Thais. Let's talk about Taissa because that's the other big one we haven't talked about. We
yeah,
haven't
so
talked about
that was the
Natalie.
second girl. So there's two girls who have like something going on with them, either paranormal or mental illness or something. But yeah, Taissa is the one of the girls.
Yeah. So she's like she's a black girl. She's taller than the other ones. She's a lesbian. She has an affair with one of the girls who we don't see in the future, but she also we see her in the future. She's married to a woman. They have this kid who I think is her wife's son,
Son. Yeah.
and he's got some paranormal. He's got something going on. He's
I
got
don't know if
some.
he does. I don't. I
Well,
think he's just seeing his mom act crazy. Like that's what his thing is, right?
but he keeps seeing a woman in the tree.
That's
Uh,
Taissa.
what the hell's she doing? Yeah, what's she doing in the tree? Sorry, what's she doing in the
You
tree?
saw that, right? You saw that at the end of episode
Yeah,
6. Taissa
yeah.
hangs out. Well, so we saw in one of the
Lottie, go
earlier
outside.
episodes that Taissa, 16-year-old Taissa, in 1996, is like she was outside eating dirt, right? Like she's eating dirt. She's like crazy. Later, you see her in the lake with her girlfriend or whatever, one of the other girls who they have a relationship together, and the girl comments, she says, "Why are your fingernails so dirty?" And Taissa's like, "I don't
Ah,
know."
I did
So
not.
like
Ah, I
she
missed
has
that.
like
I
a
missed the
something going on
fingernails.
with her.
She's
Split
eating dirt.
personality or like
She's
yeah.
eating dirt, but she turns into like a demon. She's like dry, her hair is
Yeah,
all
her
over
hair
like
goes
it's.
crazy. Her You can tell that she's like, not present.
And then
So
and then she's also living in the tree. Like we see her living in the tree in episode 6, and then we see the cell phone. So we this clarifies it's not like two different people. It's not like there's like a bizarro Superman. It's like there's not like a different Taissa. It's
no,
like the
no, no.
same
This
person.
is
She has
this is
she has the cell phone.
Taissa, and then her son Sammy keeps making like early episodes. He keeps saying like,
The
you
woman in the
know,
tree. Yeah.
he says to Taissa, "You're not the bad one." And Taissa's like, "What are you talking about? Is there a bad one? What do you mean?" And Sammy's basically saying like, "There's a bad version of you," but he doesn't say that. He just says the bad one. And then he says the lady in the tree, and Taissa, yeah, we don't know who that is, but then we discover that it is Taissa who hangs out in the tree and like, I guess basically like visually or verbally harasses her son from the outside while she's sitting in a tree eating
Uh-huh.
dirt. Like something's up there. I mean,
Teenage
kind of
turds.
random now that I think about it. Like, uh, yeah,
She's a major she's a politician now. But they make too big of a deal of the state senate. I asked someone in politics, like she has a like an announcement, and she's like, "We're a candidate for state senate." And, like all these reporters show up. I'm like, "Is that realistic?" And someone no, like yeah, I don't think
yeah.
there's that much coverage of state senate. So Taissa is like a modern figure. So she's like a professional woman. She's like the most conventionally successful of all of them. I don't know what her job was, but now she's running for state senate.
Yeah, but
Um,
they must make pretty good money, right? Because they have a pretty nice house. They have a son who they presumably had through some kind of in vitro artificial process, and that's not cheap. So like she or her wife must be doing pretty well for themselves. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
now
her
she's
wife
like,
is isn't her didn't we find out her wife was no, I don't know. Did we ever know what she did? I don't know,
maybe
but she's
I don't recall personally what happened there, but yeah, she's
yeah.
I mean they're the only I mean, Taissa's mental condition aside, they're the only sort of functional and healthy ish relationship that's portrayed in this show, right? Like you see Shauna and her husband who have somewhat of a mundane, loveless marriage, and they're both cheating on each other. You see Misty, who's like, we haven't talked about Misty yet, but she's like not with anyone, and she goes on these awkward dates with these guys. You see like Natalie hooking up with randos in a motel room. So like the only like somewhat healthy and stable relationship is Taissa and her wife.
Yeah, yeah. And so there was fun. There was no, you think this like black lesbian running for office against a Republican, you'd think it'd be more political than it is, but it's like
How do
it's
you know
not
she's not a
true.
Republican, Richard? She could be a Republican.
Yeah, I don't think so. I
They
think
never mentioned the parties.
yeah, they
Oh
don't
no!
mention the
You're right. They are Democrats because you see
oh
the
yeah, that's
scene
right. That's right. Yes.
Taissa with the very old white lady who like pressures her. The old white lady's like, "What really happened out there in the wilderness with you and the other girls?" And Taissa basically says she doesn't want to talk about it. And the old white lady's like, "I've donated so much money to women's causes and black women's causes. How dare you not tell me what happened with your with this traumatic ordeal that you went through?" Like basically, saying, "I'm not going to fund your campaign unless you spill the dirt."
Yeah, and then she's like, why do you come along and you think you get that?" Like she's like telling him like you and your white privilege like coming down and talking to me. So it's like the black woman like telling off the white liberal lady. But that's like that's as political as it gets. I think that like it's the idea that this would be. I don't think we're that progressive in 2021. Like I don't know. Does Lori Lightfoot like have a does she have a wife? Like are there a lot of black lesbian? Like
Do you
are there
think
a lot of
that?
Latin?
Do you think Taissa is loosely based on Lori Lightfoot?
I'm just thinking, is there like, are we so progressive now that oh yeah, Lori Lightfoot does have it.
Is Lori
So
Lightfoot
I
the
guess
lady in the tree?
Lori Lightfoot is a lady in the tree. Lori Lightfoot
She's
does
a
have
bad
a
one.
wife. Does have a tall white wife.
Oh,
And
white lady.
yeah.
Nice. Okay. Interesting. Do
And
they have
so
kids?
okay, I guess it's not that. I guess it's not that unrealistic. But her wife like looks conventionally like, I think, okay for like an older black woman. And so like, I don't know, most lesbians in politics like don't look, are not, are not even, that good looking. I mean, they're very look at Lori Lightfoot and her wife. So I don't know. There's something. It's not very. It's an overly. I think the
Well,
way they.
everyone's hotter on TV too, right? Like everyone's
Yeah,
just, like
I
in real
guess.
life, a woman like Shauna would not be married to a guy who looks like Jeff, and like, yeah, everyone
Yeah,
is just,
yeah.
it's TV.
Unless Jeff is just
Everyone,
sentimental and he just sticks with his, he sticks with his wife, or it's realistic. She got him when they were young, and then he just cheats on her. Like uh, that's realistic.
you know,
But
it's the same
yeah, this.
actor. I found interesting. The guy who
Mhm.
plays Jeff, the teenage version of Jeff, and the 40-year-old Jeff, same guy. They just
No, which
digitally
one is the
changed
real one? Which one is
his.
the real one? The older or
I
the
think the
younger?
older one is the more. I think they aged him a little bit because he's actually not 40 and he's
Yeah.
like 30 in real life. So they just like altered him one way,
Ah,
So maybe he's a little bit older than that. He might be like mid 30s, but yeah, I think he's
interesting. They
closer
don't,
to
but
the older version, which makes
mm,
sense, right? Because he looks like he's in good shape. He's still handsome, like whatever, good, like full head of hair. So
yeah.
they wouldn't have to do much to age.
I think this show would be better without the future. I think the in the woods, I think is much more interesting and compelling than the future. The future provides some spoilers. I think it would be better without the spoilers, not to know what happened.
Yeah.
So I think I would just.
Well,
I
they
think
would
I would
need
just.
like for hour-long dramas like this, they need like an A story and a B story, unless they just cut it in half,
Ah,
right? Like unless every episode was 30 minutes long and they just focused on the wilderness,
you could,
right?
I guess, you could have cut-ins, I guess, from like when they were in high school, like before they got trapped. Like you could do
Right.
that,
That would
and
be
then
interesting.
get to the future later. But I'm not benefiting a lot from like the 40-year-old woman like storylines with their like loveless marriages and the stalker. I'm not that interested. Like I'm more interested in what's going on, the human experience of being in the woods and what's going to happen to their relation. I'm much more interested in like, oh, if whether it's Jackie comes back, or it's Natalie, what happens to Taissa's political career. I couldn't care. I really don't care much at all about any of that stuff. Um,
Yeah.
and
Who? So
and
do
if you
you
do.
think though? Yeah, go ahead.
Mhm. Yeah, and also, I mean, it's distracting because you're like the whole time you're like, is this really the same? Is this the same person? Like, I think you really want like to have different actors playing to people at different part of their lives. It's got to be really. I mean, it's got to be really tight. Now, in the intro, when they have that, they have old Shauna and young Shauna. You see it. You see it like they're presenting it to you like they're being transformed. Taissa, by the way, there's also flashbacks to when she was like a little girl. Like, so you have high school Taissa, adult 40-year-old Taissa, and little girl, and then they're like a completely different color each time. Like when she's like a little girl, she's like very dark, and then she's like, lighter and eyes. I guess the high school and the
Well, people
adult, but
do change, like your skin and your eyes and your hair and stuff. I mean, like
yeah.
but
I
it's a
think it's
TV show,
yeah.
so you
I
grow a
think it gets darker though. It went in the wrong direction. I think with Taissa, but I guess I just I yeah I think also I have a more philosophical objection. It's like humans are the way we experience time. It's like we never experience two parts of our lives simultaneously, right? Everything is chronological. So everything in the past is a memory, is a faint dream. Everything in the future is just sort of a fantasy, and all we have is the present. And so to have like an experience where like, okay, now I'm 40-year-old Richard, and now I'm 20-year-old Richard, and now I'm elderly Richard dying, and now I'm baby Richard, and it's like all the same story, and we're watching it simultaneously. I just think there's something it takes us out of like sort of what the experience should be. I'm fine with
well,
chronological, but not
it's
jumping back and
interesting what
forth.
you're saying here because so earlier you mentioned that if they had made the main storyline what was going on in the woods, and then they occasionally jump back to show what their lives were like in high school, that would be okay. But that would also be a sort of two separate
Yeah, I
timelines as
guess.
well.
Yeah, I guess. I guess the okay. I guess the difference here is in this show, the two timelines are equal. One is not derivative off the other. It's like they're just as important
Yeah,
and they get
yeah, yeah,
just
that
as
makes
much
sense.
time. This one,
Well, you know what this
they're
reminds
smushed.
me of is, did you
Yeah,
ever watch the show Lost, where they had they're sort of stranded on this island in Lost, but then at least for the earlier seasons, they would occasionally jump back, and so you would see the characters before they shipwrecked on the island, what they did in their day jobs, what their relationships were like, all of that stuff. And I think it's interesting for the reason that you're saying, right? Is like the main storyline is on the island, and you get to get a sense of who these characters were before they got there and who they really are and what motivates them and so forth. And in this case, yeah, you're not sure which timeline to center or whatever. Like you don't know
yeah,
which one is primary. Is it the 1996 timeline or the? I mean, I guess you could say the 2021 timeline because that's like the present, and you're sort of
yeah.
glimpsing into the past to see what
Yeah, but that
happened to
one
them.
sucks. The past one is the good one. I mean, that's the one that
It's more
should be said.
interesting, and so
The
that's the one that you're more
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense.
So
Yeah,
I
it's
haven't
it's
seen Lost.
odd, but I get what you mean. I understand what you're saying here. It's weird how we're sort of perceiving them differently, but yeah, I agree though generally that the 1996 setting is more compelling, and like that's where I'm like actually paying like 100% attention and not like checking my phone or anything. I actually want to see like how they handle this. Do you think they're handling it well though? Like not the girls, but like is the show's portrayal of like how 16-year-olds would interact in a sort of life or death situation, is that realistic, do you think?
So I mean, going back to just one more thing I'll say about that. I haven't seen Lost, but the Breaking Bad and Saul do this really well. There's a central in each show. There's a central timeline. You're just going this,
Okay.
but then you're getting glimpses. You're getting, and you're not even sure what's real or what's not in the past. You're just getting like a bare hint. And this is the way sort of memory works. It's like I don't remember like entire years of my life. I remember like a glimpse of I was talking to this person or this thing happened, and so that's just like sprinkled into the main story. That I think is perfect, and that's very good. Um, but as far as like realistically how 16-year-olds I mean, yeah, I guess. I mean, nothing struck me as uh, absurd. Um, I think that I think that yeah, you go out there and you try to survive. I think they're almost doing too well. I don't know how much time has passed in the show so far, um,
It's hard to get
but
a sense of that, right? Is it like weeks, I guess?
could be months.
Like
We know it did in
could be
winter days. So like say Taissa in the last episode is what happens when winter comes. So we know at least there hasn't been a
it hasn't
I
been a
guess that
year.
mhm.
But yeah, is it 1 week or is it a month? Is
Yeah.
it 2 months? Like it could
Yeah, I
literally
mean,
be anywhere from like 2 weeks to 2
they
months.
conveniently find a cabin, so they have shelter, and they conveniently find endless bullets, right? A gun with, and
Yeah, yeah,
I guess what's going to have to happen at some point, the gun is going to have to break or something, and so then I think then things because the gun is bailing them out right now.
yeah,
They have access to food and
yeah,
unlimited bullets very very conveniently because they told us
yeah.
that. They have enough to practice and become become good hunters. So
Yeah, they don't even look like they're stranded, right? Like I was watching with my girlfriend, and she was watching this. Like these girls are like, even though like they're a little bit grungy or whatever, like that's not how
yeah, yeah,
how you would look if you went like a month without a shower. I guess
yeah,
they have the
yeah.
lake. To be fair, they do have the lake, and you see them sort of bathing or whatever, but they still look like their clothes are clean. Like yeah, the cabin. It's like there are worse ways to be stranded in that kind of situation. One
Yeah,
thing I thought the
especially
show
Lottie.
did that was
Yeah,
clever is that they're
the
a team, right? Like they enter, like they crash land, and they're a soccer. Like they already have established that they're a team, and so I think this helps to like make it more believable that they're able to survive, is because they're used to working together. Whereas if it was just like if you put I don't know 8 or 10 random 16-year-old girls together, they wouldn't be able to work that way,
yeah.
or
Well, I mean,
16-year-old kids
people.
in general, for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, people can be resourceful in these situations because it's not like they have, it's not like you have anything else to do and like you're focused on your survival. So I think people can pretty quickly, come together and find a way to survive. But you're right, like their legs should be like hairier. I mean, I don't know if you see their legs, like they don't have like body hair or
Not
like
paying
any.
as much attention to their legs, but all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like little things like that. You would, and like they should be getting thinner, and they're not as far as I can tell. And so like you'd have to like you want to do this well, you'd have to make the actresses like starve during the show because you need them to
Right.
get thinner. And they're really not. I mean, I don't think they physically look
They look the
much
same,
different.
more or
Yeah,
less. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
and they're
true. You
hungry.
would
They're
have
hungry
like
all the time.
wanted them to at least look visibly thinner in some way, like not like gaunt, but like maybe 5 to 10 pounds lighter, just to show the progression. Like the coaches too, right? Like you would expect the
Oh
guys to
yeah,
look thinner, but like yeah, the none of the male characters look, they look the same basically.
yeah. Yeah,
So it's a good point.
yeah, it's early, so it's like it's early, so maybe it's only been weeks. I don't know. We don't. She had enough time to miss a period. I think that the menstrual cycle maybe tells us something because they had the cycles. They were all had a period at the same time, and then she tries to have the abortion, but she fools them in the one time into thinking that she's had her period, and so maybe we know it's been enough for one menstrual cycle, but not two menstrual cycles. Maybe
So like a
that's the
month-ish, roughly
yeah.
speaking.
Right.
Um, one
So
one thing
yeah,
I thought
maybe
that was a good on the part of the writers was to which I mean convenient, or was it good? But the coach lost his leg, right? Like he gets it trapped under part of the airplane in the first episode, and then like Misty chops his leg off and cauterizes it, and so now like the assistant coach, right? Ben, I think is his
yeah,
name. He would have been like almost by default the leader of this group because he's the only adult. Well, first he'd be the only adult, and he's like an adult male, and he knows how to shoot a gun, right? Like he's the one who taught the other kids how to shoot. And so by breaking his leg and like literally
yeah,
making him, have to walk around with a crutch, like his authority is diminished. And so basically like they're a leaderless group essentially. There's no like clear de facto leader.
yeah, yeah. And Misty is such an evil character. So Misty is the reason we find out in season 2, right? She's the reason they I guess that box was like a tracker. They would have found them.
Yeah, that was it would have sent a distress signal. Yeah, that was a really interesting scene, right? Because you see at the beginning of that episode, you see Misty like 4 years before that, right? So she's like 12 or 13 or something, I don't know. But she's or some kids make fun of her, like I don't know. They're basically like she's mocked and teased. You can tell like just by the way she looks. I think she has braces when she's a kid and glasses and her frizzy hair. Clearly unpopular and not liked. And then they get to this, they have this life and death situation, and Misty, like, she starts like taking charge and like helping people with their medical problems because she said she took like a babysitter CPR course or something,
Yeah,
and so she's helping them. And then she overhears a couple of the other girls say something like, if Misty wasn't here, we'd all be fucked.
yeah,
And she hears, basically she's like, wow, this is the first time that people like me, and she enjoys this feeling of being wanted and liked so much that when she encounters the distress signal box in the wilderness just by chance, she like damages it so that there's no distress signal sent, and so that they will
yeah,
purposely be stranded.
yeah,
She's crazy, man.
yeah. She is crazy. That is crazy. And then she poisons the coach, the assistant coach, so he can be dependent on
Why did
her.
she poison him?
Huh?
Why did she poison him?
Oh, to make him weak and dependent on her. I think.
Oh, was it a Munchausen by proxy thing?
It doesn't have to be Munchausen. Is that the motivation of Munchausen to make them weak and dependent? I don't know, but like she loves the fact that he needs her, and she wants to like turn that into like a
I forgot about
relationship.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so she
I
tries to, and
forgot that she
he's
poisoned
like,
him.
and he pretends to be in love with her too, um,
Right.
and he's in a tough situation. You feel bad for this guy. He's in a tough situation. He needs this girl to survive, and she's like obsessed with
Yeah.
him, and
Because
like
she's the
she's in
one
love.
who like knows the most about like medical procedures and whatever, and she's the one who's basically kept him alive thus far. She's the one who cut his leg off, cauterized it, and sort of nursed him back to health. And it's an interesting sort of reversal, right? Because you have a teenage girl who's like sexually pressuring a grown man, and the grown man says yes, but let's not tell anybody about this. And so like ordinarily if you saw a situation where like there's a budding romance going on between a grown man and an underage girl, and the man is like, don't tell anyone about this, the man is the one who's the predator and the girl's the one you feel bad for.
Yeah,
But in this case it's like it's the man you feel bad for, and
yeah,
this girl is the one you'd be terrified of.
yeah. So Misty ends up like their leader, right? We see the scene where she is like, I don't know, she's like their leader somehow, right?
I guess at least when it comes to the sort of medical issues, you
Well,
don't really see her like exercise
the
any
cannibal
authority.
the ceremony where they all eat that meat.
Oh, that's later, right? That's like sort of a glimpse into the future,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. This is
That
where
seems to
we're
be,
going.
yeah, where she's wearing like the elk's antlers or whatever, and like they're all wearing fur. I'm very curious to know like what happened that
How
led
we
them
get there.
to, how the show gets them there.
Yeah,
Um,
and so somebody is, so cannibalism is the thing. So the opening scene of the show, is a girl is running. I should go watch this now because I didn't know who the characters were. So now maybe like it'll make more sense. Was that Jackie? I don't know who falls in there
oh,
in the.
interesting. Yeah, I don't remember. I know what you're talking about. The scene. There's a girl who's running. She doesn't. Do they trap her or does she just fall and
I really
die?
don't know. Well, no,
Like,
well, somebody set the trap because there's a bunch of like sticks like sitting in the floor. They've been set there by somebody. Now somebody was on this in this wilderness before them. So there was somebody who had that symbol on the tree right when they crash. There's a scene where the tree and somebody's got that symbol with like that person with the sticks through them. So somebody is there, or there's a spirit, or there's something there. And that uh and so like does that thing kill her? Does that thing control the girls? Is that thing in whatever antagonistic? We don't know, but the girls end up in like some kind of tribal thing, or at least Misty does. Maybe not the others. Maybe
well, there
Misty
were
is.
girls sitting around her. Well, yeah, that's right. There could
We
be
don't see
like
that
this could be members
there's
of some
somebody.
other tribe or some other clan or something
Yeah, somebody
that
in
she
that
gets recruited
community.
into. That's
Yeah,
possible. I mean, it's a weird thing, right? Because like, so Taissa, when she's running for political office, her opponent runs a political ad, basically implying that like don't elect this cannibal, and you see a picture of like a woman eating like this big piece of meat. I guess like basically calling attention to the fact that she like there are rumors. I don't know if there's any like in 2021 if it's confirmed that these girls were cannibals or if
no,
they're
no,
just
it's not
rumors,
confirmed. It's
but
yeah,
like they all think that or something, and so but apparently it's true, right? Like they were cannibals, they were eating other humans, other
no, we
meat.
don't know. We don't know that for 100%. We
We don't.
see. Oh, we see the girl get carved up. That's right. Do we see the girl get carved up at the
I
beginning?
don't.
Yeah,
Uh,
we do, don't we?
okay.
Uh, because
Yeah.
we see them. There's a different scene. This is not the very beginning where they're all grabbing meat. That could be a person. That could be a person. It could be something else.
It's
Uh,
possible, yeah. It could be a person, it could be an animal, right? Because they are wearing like
yeah,
furs of
but the
like
girl
elk or
herself
deer or
gets
something.
pulled and then carved up by somebody. So we don't see who. We don't see who's doing that. We don't see who eats Jackie or whoever that girl is. Jackie gets a bracelet at some point. Somebody told me, and the girl who gets caught at the beginning was also wearing the same bracelet, or not the bracelet, necklace. Um,
Oh,
so
okay, interesting.
Somebody pointed this out to me. So somebody is eating somebody. Somebody's eating a girl. We don't know who.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
later, Misty and someone else is eating some kind of meat, which could be a human, or it could be something else.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
and so yeah, there's tons we don't know. Um, and yeah, it's
Well,
interesting. I mean,
there's Lottie, right? So Lottie is the other
yeah,
girl who the show spends some time on, who herself has some kind of a mental condition. There's the scene it flashes back to when she's a little girl. She's riding
yeah,
in the backseat with her parents. Suddenly she starts screaming,
not mental,
and the
that's supernatural, some
parents.
kind of supernatural thing.
Well, we don't know for sure, right? I think the show keeps it deliberately unclear, right? Like I think it wants to sort of play with the viewer to keep you in a state of suspense, whether there's something supernatural or whether you could just chalk all of this up to sort of mental
Hmm.
illness and
Yeah.
coincidences. Um, and so, yeah, Lottie screams as a little girl. They stop the car, and then there's an accident that happens right in front of them. And so Lottie screaming saved their lives. And it's suggested maybe she has like premonitions, maybe she's psychic or something. And then, but then the parents put her on medication, right? For the first few episodes, you see Lottie sneaking over to her luggage to take these pills. And you think like maybe she's
Mm.
schizophrenic or maybe she has something going on with her. Because later, like during the seance, right? Like Jackie organizes a seance, to feel useful, and then Lottie starts freaking out again. Um, and so we don't know, like, what's going on with her, right? Like, is there something supernatural? Does she have premonitions? Is she just a little bit loop? Like, yeah, it's just interesting. Like, why do the writers have to give like all these girls something going on? Like Shauna's like the only one among these girls, I think. Well, I guess there's the other lesbian young girl, right? The white girl that Thais is dating, who's like doesn't have anything going on. She's just a normal girl, but yeah, seems like Shauna is the only one who doesn't have some kind of like severe mental condition,
Yeah,
or
so
is not like
Taissa,
affected by the supernatural in some way, right?
yeah. Well, the Christian girl too.
Oh, right, yeah. There's the Christian girl, which I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess arguably, if you're a fundamentalist Christian, you believe in the supernatural in some sense. But because she baptized Lottie, and then Lottie started having some kind of a weird vision,
Yeah, and then
right?
there's another black girl. I think it's Taissa's future wife is also there, and she doesn't have anything
Oh,
going on.
yeah, she has like a very much a secondary role, right? Like you don't really see her talk or do much. She's not
Yeah,
like one
which
of
like
the
it makes which is sort of like the point, I guess, when they're older. She's like Taissa's like the man in the relationship, and she's like sort of the background figure. Um,
yeah. Taissa is
and
like a more sort of dominant force in in the wilderness, right? Like she has a pretty big personality. She like stops people from fighting. Like there's a scene where Jackie and Natalie have a disagreement and they're about to go to blows, and Jackie's like, bring it on, burnout, and then
yeah,
Taissa gets between them and stops them
you
from
know who I don't
fighting.
like? What character I don't like? I don't like the future Natalie. I think they're trying to do this like thing where it's like a male prototype, like a guy who just is like grizzled and like doesn't care and like is doing all this cool action hero stuff. But she just looks like she looks like an old lady, and
Well, she
it's
looks like a druggie. I thought they did this well, right? Like you see her as
it's
a
also
kid, she's a
terrible.
burnout, doing a lot of drugs, and like that's like she looks the oldest, right? Like she has leathery, wrinkly skin.
Yeah,
She like her voice is like a little bit hoarse, like that.
yeah,
I
but
thought they did that
she's
pretty
like sort
well
of
to
like a
portray it like
Rambo.
that.
She's like this old woman, but she's like sort of she's this old, the burned
What does
out
she
woman.
do? What does she do? That's Rambo. Oh,
What?
right. She pours the gasoline on the guy with the lighter.
Yeah, and it's
That
tons
was.
of. And she looks like she's about to do another Rambo. She was gonna go and she breaks into Misty's house and she points the gun at, like she's doing it like it's not that it's not like she's doing amazing like death defying stuff, but it's like it's not what you see like an old
Yeah,
woman.
I thought she was just like a petty criminal. I
Well,
mean, it's a
it's
little bit
funny.
over the top for the show, but you know, yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
but they're trying. This is a male prototype. I don't think it works with women. It doesn't work with an older woman. Um,
Mm,
oh, that's funny when she points the gun at. She's there when Misty comes home, and she points the gun at Misty, and the boyfriend or whatever the guy she's dating, he just goes, he's like, "Oh, I'm out of here." Like he doesn't call the police, which I think is funny. He's like, "I'm not going to get
that was
involved."
hilarious. I actually liked that. He was like, "Fuck this, I'm out," because
I'm
Misty, like
not
he
going to
didn't
call
like
the.
Misty in the first place, and then he goes
Yeah,
and sees the girl, and yeah, they okay. Now I remember that scene. That was like a little bit silly. Yeah, like it's weird because Misty does crazy shit too, right? Like she literally, wherever the woman is who's
yeah. She
following them
kidnaps.
around,
Yes. She kidnaps that
yeah, she
woman. She
kidnaps
puts
this,
some
but
drugs.
she sedates her, right? Like the girl gets in the car, she immediately injects her with something, and then locks her up. But this is believable somehow. Like Misty's craziness makes sense, whereas Natalie's is a little. I guess what you're saying, right? Like it's sort of a male archetype of like grizzled
Yeah,
burnout or whatever. But like
yeah.
Misty is shown from the beginning to be like a little bit loopy, and so it's consistent with her character. Natalie as a girl, I guess she's like shown to be kind of tough or whatever, but I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, there was that interesting scene where she's with I don't know the kid's name, the teenage boy who they're making out in the airplane, the
Travis.
wreckage of the
He's the
airplane.
one.
Travis.
He's yeah. He was the one who dies later.
Oh right, he does die. Yeah, as an adult version, they see him hanging from the
Yeah.
crane. But yeah, so yeah, Natalie, they're making out in the wreckage of the plane when they're kids, and then she's like, he asks how many guys she's been with, and she flips out on him, and like,
Yeah, gives him a
she
feminist rant like why have they
yeah,
this
vaginas have
guy
monologues now, and
yeah.
that
Yeah.
was like
For
I mean, it was
fair. She's got
that whole like monologue. Well, her monologue, that rant was super interesting because on the one hand, she's yelling at him, saying like, "Why are you asking me how many guys I've been with? You don't get to judge me on that." And like goes on this sort of like, "Why is it that guys always have to pursue and the women are the one who have to say no?" And on and on. And then she says, I've been with two guys. It was terrible. I was drunk and fucked up, and I was with this older guy. And I basically she's saying I didn't like what happened. So it's like this interesting, like I found that like there's a complexity there of like on the one hand, it's like this girl power message of like girls should be able to fuck around too, but then on the other, it's like when they do, they have these very
Yeah,
horrible
bad things
experiences
happen.
with
Yeah,
older guys.
yeah. I think that's right. The young Natalie is a very, I think, attractive character, and the older Natalie is a very unattractive character.
In
And the
what
younger,
way? Like,
physically and emotionally and spiritually, I guess
okay.
everybody. Yeah, the uh, the young Natalie. By the way, her hair. I don't know what's going on with her hair, but it's like got this like style that is still with her.
Yeah, it doesn't
After all
grow. Her
these,
hair hasn't grown, right? Like that's the other thing is like shouldn't the
but it's
girl's
all
hair?
styled in it's like a styled in a very unique sort of way. I
Yeah.
think it's dyed. It seems like it's dyed to her. She's not a natural blonde, is she? Because she's
Yeah. So
older.
should she
She's got,
have her roots growing in? And
yeah. So she
yeah,
stays she stays blonde, and it doesn't grow. Um,
yeah.
yeah, so that's interesting. But she's like one thing I thought it was like there was so much swearing in they were they keep saying fuck at the in like the first few episodes. I'm like, this is going to be the whole show, but then they stopped swearing. Did you notice this? Because I found it very annoying. I thought there was like overuse of trying to like shove it in our face.
Oh,
Women can swear as much as men, but
well,
they
are
do
you
that for like
talking
two
about
episodes
when they're teenagers or when they're
when they're
adults?
teenagers. When they're
Do they say
teenagers, but
fuck
then they
what?
stop even as
Yeah, they kind of
teenagers.
do.
They
Yeah.
not as it was very noticeable. I
Hmm.
think it was much more extreme at the beginning. But yeah,
Was that just
where
to
was I?
like establish like that they're sort of I don't know, that these girls are tough and that they're able to handle challenges and they're a sport, they're sort of jocks, right? Like their sports team, something
Yeah,
like that. I know what you mean though. I noticed it too that it was a little bit over the top. Um, there was an interesting, I guess, subtext. I don't know how intentional this was about religion, which is so one of the other characters, Laura Lee, right? She's the sort of token fundamentalist Christian girl who's like, before the games, she's like, let's pray, and then the girls make fun of her, and like basically like she's like the sort of the butt of the joke for a lot of these girls because of her religious faith. But then once they get to once they're in this life and death situation in the wilderness, like they have these like burial rituals, right? And Laura Lee leads the prayers, and they're all into it. And like basically, like once they're in a situation where survival is at stake, they're more open to like religion and to rituals and to prayer and to
yeah,
like sort of memorial rites, which I find
yeah,
interesting, right? Like, because that's consistent with a lot of the research indicating that like wealth correlates with atheism, like both within countries and across countries, right? Like poor countries are more religious. Within rich countries, poor people tend to be more religious. And I don't know if that was like intentional, but that was an interesting point there that when people are in like very difficult
yeah.
situations, religion becomes more appealing.
Right. Yeah. The treatment of Christianity is respectful in this show, and they are the people do they gravitate towards people who, especially in tough times, who feel certain about themselves. The fact that Lottie has no idea what's going, she's either mentally ill or uh, she's got some
Possessed.
supernatural power.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she goes to the Christian girl's named Laura. You say
Laura Lee, yeah.
Laura Lee. Her last name is Lee.
They all call her Laura Lee, which I don't know if that means that's her last name or her middle
Or
name or if
Lori is
that's
it's not Lori. Okay. Well, whatever. It's not Lori. Okay.
Laura Lee.
Laura Lee. Okay, yeah, maybe the middle name is Lee. Laura Lee, or they wouldn't call her a first and last name, I don't think. So yeah, so Laura. So yeah, she's like certain of who she is. She actually stops Lottie when she's like "Devil be gone" or something when she's freaking
Yeah,
out.
she
And
throws
she
the
just
Bible
throws
at
them.
her and it
Yeah,
works.
she just hits her with it. Yeah, it shocks her out of her trance, and then she comes to her. Like nobody's saying this Christianity stuff is nonsense. Now it's funny because you could see a collision course at some point. You have an abortion storyline going on. You could imagine Laura Lee coming in and trying to save the baby. You have a
Mm.
lesbian thing going on too, which she could become like. You could see the other side of this fundamentalist Christianity, which would be funny. But yeah, so the abortion storyline, it's like just in time for this for the recent news. I wonder if next season, if it's not too late, they're gonna play this up now because this is the current thing. But it's a show that's actually pretty immune from the current thing. I mean, it's pretty. You don't have any Black Lives Matter. You don't have like any like you know. You have a black lesbian character. There's not. She doesn't face racism really, except for one white liberal.
The white,
White
the white
liberal.
liberal lady is, yeah,
It's
yeah,
the only
basically
one
trying
being
to guilt
racist.
her or like blackmail her into telling her about her experiences.
Yeah, and like
Well, like,
it portrays society as like very progressive. Like it's not even an issue that she's like a lesbian and she has like she has a lesbian. It's not even seen as like an issue. Like her race is not seen as an issue either in the campaign. And yeah, I mean, and the guys, I mean, the men are not portrayed as like they're not portrayed as like preying on the women and like the situation. Like you could imagine that. Like the men are like Natalie is more sexually experienced than Travis, and he's like afraid to do anything. And then you have Misty, who's just like abusing this poor older assistant coach. So it's not a it's not a political show. I mean, it's
yeah,
so
which
that
is
that
yeah, you
we
could
can
imagine
appreciate.
it would be that way. Well, I guess you could say, because so there's the scene with Taissa and the other girl, her girlfriend in the wilderness, the white girl, and they do keep their relationship a secret, presumably because the other girls would judge them in some way.
Yeah, but
Uh,
that's not 1996. I mean, of course they would. I mean, it's not
yeah,
like
and so they're sort of commenting implicitly on the fact that attitudes have changed, and that in the '90s, even this soccer team of teenage girls, like they would have been judgmental in some way about this. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, like, I wonder, because I like when I watch, because I remember, like, I was a little kid, but I have memories of the '90s, and I wonder, like, what do like young people think when they see the '90s portrayed in that way? Because like it seems like relatively an accurate depiction of like attitudes and what it was like, especially the first episode when they're still like before the plane crash. Like, what do you like Zoomers? What do they think when they see like portrayals of the '90s? Do they think like, oh, it's so backwards and terrible and how homophobic or whatever,
well,
or
do
do
you
they
see do
think
you see
like, oh,
Ross?
or is it appealing in some way?
Yeah. Do you see Ross do that? I mean, when he talks about the decadent society and that, like, if you look at like the clothes and like the mores from like 1950s to 1970s, they're very different. But then you look at
Yeah.
1990s to 2010s, and it's not really that different. Like somebody could pop in from the 1970s and 1950s, they'd look like they're from a completely different culture. And someone from the 1990s could pop into 2022, and it wouldn't be that different. Like the gay stuff is like the most extreme thing, but like even like stuff like racial attitudes was so different in 50s to the 70s. It's not hasn't changed that much since like the 90s. There's this wokeness, but there's been previous iterations. There was previous iterations of like Rodney King and like all this, all these same issues.
Yeah, yeah. I
So
think gay attitudes would be the one that changed the most. I mean,
that's
if
the
you
big, yeah,
watch, yeah,
unquestionably that's the big one. But it's like, and
maybe
even in night,
attitudes towards women, like, I mean, if you watch things from like the early 2000s, like, I mean, yeah, guys were less, like, they were less what concerned with saying
so,
things that today would, I think, be considered
yeah.
misogynist or sexist or
Yeah.
something,
Well, did you
right?
see Matt Iglesias tweeted a couple days ago, like, "Oh, I have COVID. I've been watching Entourage, and that was a completely different time."
Yeah, right. Like the Entourage probably couldn't be made today,
Oh no,
right?
Entourage didn't
Like,
have to be. Yeah. But
have you seen it?
I guess well, yeah, and the rap
Yeah.
lyrics from the time. If you did, you listen to like Snoop Dogg's like first album where it was
Oh
all about like,
yeah,
oh, I hate bitches, I love
Biggie.
slapping hoes, I love passing them around to my homies. I mean, it's really
Yeah,
some pretty
yeah,
crazy stuff, and
yeah. I
it's
don't think like I don't think. Well, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't really see like Kendrick Lamar or someone like or Kanye or anyone like using those kinds of lyrics today. Any of like sort of the modern rappers. I mean, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
and even like the casual sort of sexism or whatever of that time is different. But what I wonder is that like when young people who are sort of have been immersed in like this generation's cultural mores, like when a 20-year-old watches something from 2002, are they like horrified by it, or are they like, oh, it looks kind of nice, or
I don't
like,
think
what do they think?
I don't think it's that different. I mean, you did see. I mean, like the sort of the academic like feminist critique. Like this stuff was been around for ever. So somebody like could say like, "Oh, this is a sexist." Like, okay, so that 1996 thing, and when like we're watching when Natalie's telling Travis like, "Why is this?" Like, I could have seen that being like a set, and then during a show in the 1990s, it
Oh
wasn't.
yeah.
It was like this dude's like having fun thing was okay, but there was also the critique of it was already there, and it was like if you were like a little, if you were I think too uptight about like sexism and we've gone away from like the sort of sex positivity, but even this is I think very recent. Like I think it's like Me Too. I think it's like Me Too, and it might not be that lasting. Entourage. When did Entourage even end? I mean,
It was
we're talking.
2006 to like 2011 or something.
Yeah, so 20. I mean,
Yeah.
Entourage was there till 20. So like 10 years ago, you could still the Entourage was still there. Larry David, you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, and it's not like it's a different show than Entourage. He's not a young guy banging everyone, but like the outlook is just like it's like him and like his friends like talking about how crazy women are and just trying to like get them to have sex. And so like nothing has really changed. It's still like the male heterosexual perspective is still can still be represented on
In those
TV.
shows, yeah, but not today, right? Like those shows today
Well,
are
Curb Your
like what,
Enthusiasm is
maybe.
on now. I mean, it's still on now.
Yeah, but is it this? Well, yeah, but Larry David, like now when Larry David does things like that, it's almost like like unclear whether that, like, it's sort of it's meant to be a satire, I think, because Larry David is one of these comedians who can like get away with like making fun of like wearing a MAGA hat to like get out of getting beat up by a biker, like those kinds of scenes, right? Like
No,
it's
but I
funny,
don't
it's
think
like
that's different from
laughs.
the yeah. Yeah, but like sexist wanting to get laid, Larry David is the real thing. While the MAGA thing was just it was just an act, specifically an act within the show. I think you're supposed to see the world through his eyes, and
Yeah.
it's the same as
Yeah,
it's the
okay.
same.
So you think that like the sort of general attitudes around like sex and uh attitudes around relationships and those kinds of things, do you think they've changed much since like the Entourage era or like the sort of mid
I think
2000s?
I think that the last 3 to 5 years. So it's not
I
like
agree with
I
that.
think.
That like in the last 5 years, things have changed a lot. That's like
Yeah,
the
but so
post
we
Me Too
don't. So
era.
like, if you're 20 years, you still sort of you could still remember like 20. Even if you're 20, you still remember like 2015. You were 15 years old. You might remember 2010. You might have seen Entourage. It was still sort of on when you were a kid. So I don't think. Yeah. So and we'll see how long uh this stuff lasts. I mean, I do think this is a stupid example, but I watched the Sonic movies. I just watched the Sonic movies and I talked to you about them. And all of the main characters are white guys. The women have no real prominent roles in the shows. Maybe we should watch them, but it's like it was
White
the number
guys,
one.
isn't this like a cartoon hedgehog?
Well,
Like what?
yeah,
Oh,
but
Dr. Robotnik.
Dr. Robotnik is Jim Carrey, who's like this white autistic genius who's like trying to get Sonic. But Sonic's best friend is this other white guy named Tom, who's like a cop, and the cop is portrayed sympathetically. He's just like as a
Is
friend.
Tails?
And so
Is there
like
Tails in this movie?
Tails comes in Sonic. This is not good. This is going to turn into a Sonic discussion. Sonic,
Okay.
Sonic,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, Tails comes in Sonic 2. But the twist is he's married to a black woman. The cop, the Sonic's friend. So he is married to a black woman.
Okay.
She has a sister, but her sister, and this is what non-woke. This is how non-woke movies and shows represent black people. Her sister is this big black woman with an outgoing personality who's always like, "Oh, no, you didn't. I hate you, Tom." Like, so that's how you get representation in like a non-woke show. So
So they're still playing on like these kind of tropes, these
yeah, exactly.
stereotypes.
But
Like,
you
okay.
know what? Okay, so this is a better. Did I tell you about the Amazon Prime was promoting a show, Women? The summer I became pretty. Have you looked at this?
Is this the one you sent me, or was this something else, like based on a
I might
book
have
or
I
something?
might have said it to you, but I watched the first like half of the episode, but honestly it became boring. But it's like it was a very like early 1990s kind of vibe to it. So I guess what I'm saying with all this stuff that seems stupid and unrelated is that I do think that like the stuff has peaked in art and culture. I do think the
Oh,
wokeness.
interesting. It's like
I
it
do
was a
think
flash in the
the
pan.
yeah, I do. I think it was the Trump era. I think was a really an accelerant for it. I think the
Yeah.
transcripts, like when they show like even the news stories about like Leah Thomas, like now they'll have a scientist who says, oh, maybe they have an advantage in women's sport, trans.
Maybe they have an advantage,
Which they didn't do,
perhaps.
like they wouldn't even do that 5 years ago.
That's true. I
So
mean, yeah,
yeah,
the Trump era coincided with Me Too, which coincided with a bunch of other cultural phenomena. So yeah, I
yeah.
mean, maybe things are, maybe the pendulum is swinging back a little bit.
Right, and so yeah, so I see Yellow Jacket sort of in that vein.
Right.
What we should be doing is like one reason I wanted to watch Sonic. Well, my son loves it. I mean, so he wanted to, I got him, just to sit down and watch something. So he liked it, but um, it's always good to watch like Northman, the Northman, the other thing the most unwoke thing I've ever seen. Pretty much, we talked about it the last year. So there's a lot of artistic output right now that is really indicates that 2019, 2020 might have been the peak of that stuff. And yeah, we'll see.
Corporations
This
still want to
is
make
a
money, right? Like the woke
well,
stuff, like they don't. It doesn't. It's not a moneymaker, right? Audiences will. I mean, I don't know. I think I asked you. Did you see the new Top Gun? But that's like the best selling movie in the
yeah,
country right now, and it is like it's so wildly anachronistic. Like the whole, like just the plot. There's no agenda whatsoever. I mean, arguably, you could say there's a right wing agenda because it makes patriotism look good. It makes
yeah,
the
yeah.
Navy look good, whatever. But like, it's just a straightforward movie about like a white pilot who like does good things and like is a good leader, a good
Yeah.
teacher, and
And
a good man.
what year was Midway? That was not that long ago either.
A couple years, yeah, I don't know. But well, that was a portrayal of a real event, though, right? So you could argue that that's like, oh, they're trying to
Yeah,
portray World
that
War
was
II and the way
2019.
that it
Yeah,
was. But Top Gun is like set in the modern age. Like Top Gun is set in 2022. Tom Cruise is an aging pilot and whatever. And it's
yeah,
like American flags and patriotism and like heroic actions and no
yeah.
like weird girl power moment of like the female pilot like outflying him to like show him his boss or something. Like it's just a good movie, right? And everyone loves it, right? Surprisingly, on Rotten Tomatoes, the critics and the audience have it at like 98% or something. So
Yeah,
yeah,
so
maybe
yeah,
we're
I haven't
right.
seen either Top Gun, but yeah, Tyler Cohen made that point. He said it's amazingly unwoke.
Yeah.
So you're right. There is a market. The market mechanisms do put a limit on this. We're like universities. There's no market mechanism. They can go as crazy as they want. Um, and so yeah, I mean the liberals are bumping up against human nature. That's why these things swing. That's why it never never this gender fluidity. I mean, it never goes on forever. Eventually, human nature snaps back. So,
Hmm.
have you looked into when like season 2 of Yellow Jackets is coming out? Is it going to
No,
do we know?
I saw that it got renewed, but I don't know when. Yeah, when they're going to air it. I think
Mm.
later this year they're doing White Lotus season 2, which we should
Oh, we got
watch.
to do that. That's
Yeah, I
another
think
one
like
that did we talk about the non? That one was also not
yeah,
quite.
Andrew
Yeah, yeah.
Sullivan wrote a whole piece on how unwoke
Yeah,
it
yeah, it was
was.
mocking of liberalism. That's right. That's right. Yes, we talked about this on our show. So yeah, another one. I mean, it's always yeah. It's this is another. This is a yeah. The culture. The culture is, and even though you don't like Better Call Saul, that's also a very unwoke show. As I have to talk to my other friend about because you stubbornly refuse to get into this brilliant show.
I tried that. Yeah. Yeah. So there's like, yeah, that's an interesting point. Maybe in the last year and a half, things are sort of shifting, and yeah, this show does seem to be a part of that because even though it has plenty of opportunities to be preachy, right? With Taissa's character, with what Natalie and the teenage boy and all like what yeah just there are and Shauna and her infidelity and her husband cheating on her, like there are ways for them to insert agendas if they want, but it's just like a straightforward plot of like people who are complicated in situations acting human, and it's a good show.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so me and Rob Henderson are officially optimistic about American culture and its ability, at least in movies and TV and art, which is obviously important to overcome sort of the nightmare that we have survived over the last three or 4 years.
Thank God. Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. Let's watch the rest of the season as soon as possible, and yeah, let's do this
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. We'll talk soon.